first of all, what is your new job?
Senior Director for Counterterrorism in the White House inside the National Security Council, working for National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and the 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
Okay. What is Deputy Assistant to the President?
It's funny, I get this a lot. People have been congratulating me on my 2 new jobs. Well, U.S. government doesn't quite work like that. You only get 1 paycheck. So everyone in the White House has to have a rank and then has to have, a job description. So my rank is Deputy Assistant to the President. There are special assistants, and deputy assistants. So I'm what is in the parlance of the swamp, I'm a DAP, Deputy Assistant to the President, but my actual job description, my portfolio is Senior Director for Counterterrorism in the National Security Council.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a ton of stupid questions, just because I just want to make sure I got all this. Yep. So what is the National Security Council?
It's an organization created with the National Security Act of 1947 that also created the CIA and the Air Force and the modern national security state. It is the highest deliberative, coordinative body for national security in the United States serving the president. When it meets at principles, the level of principles, it is actually, in fact, the cabinet members. So if it's a real emergency, super important, then in the Situation Room under the West Wing, in that secure facility, you would have the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the National Security Advisor meeting to advise the President of the United States. Now, that's very rare and that's unusual. As a result, most days it meets at my level. So Senior Director in their various portfolios. There's about a dozen directorates in the White House, in the National Security Council, which are either functional or geographic. So mine is functional, counterterrorism, but for example, there is a directorate for Middle Eastern affairs, there's one for Europe, there's one for intelligence. So think of it as the highest policy-making body advising the president on issues of national security. And everything feeds into there. So the intelligence community, the armed services, all of U.S. government feeds into the N.S.A. so it can provide the requisite advice to the commander-in-chief. And these aren't dumb questions. These are really good questions that nobody has asked me in the last month since America took back their country.
How can I want to ask what is the job exactly? So this is actually my dad's advice to me when I got a job. My first real job in San Diego was figure out who your boss is. That was his first advice. So I want to get the hierarchy right. So you mentioned Mike Waltz. So who is he?
So he is the national security advisor. So he's like the top person at the president's elbow every single day, making sure that he gets the advice, the briefings, everything he needs to know about keeping all Americans safe. So Mike Waltz will be my boss. First ever Green Beret to serve in Congress. I campaigned for Mike before he became a congressman, romping, stomping, snake eater. So he is the perfect man for the job, and he will be my immediate boss. And then above him is everyone's boss, President Trump.
Okay, so you got Trump, Mike Waltz, and then a bunch of, you said maybe like a dozen or so.
Yes, senior directors running their specific portfolios inside the N.S.A.
How often are you going to be in contact with Mike Waltz?
Given what Biden and Kamala and Jake Sullivan, the clown of a national security advisor, have wrought on the world in the last 4 years, and how many millions of illegals have been let into this country, many of whom we have already identified as being threats on the terror watch list. I think I'm going to be seeing Mike every morning very early with the updated threat analysis. And also working very closely, let's not leave him out of the picture because we are so excited that he accepted it, working very closely with Tom Homan, who has his own special portfolio, who is the border czar, former director of ICE. because the first thing we have to do at 12:01 is to begin the largest deportation operation in U.S. history to find all the people who are already convicted terrorists, the thousands and thousands and thousands of criminals who are here, and those who exploited Kamala Harris's open border to come into our nation from extant threat groups like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Al-Nusra, Hamas, Hezbollah, you name it. So the terror cartels, you name it. So I'll be probably meeting Mike often in the beginning, and then once we stabilize matters, perhaps a little less frequently.
I'm sorry, I don't want to put this on you because you're the guy and whatever, but like this is so surreal for me, just like that this is all still happening. And that you're now the guy who's doing this. Like, this is so amazing. I can't. Like, I just had this vision of like you, Tom Homan, Mike Walls, like all the guys meeting day one and every day, and it's just like, oh, yeah, like this is.
But don't forget, I mean, my gosh, I've been lobbying for 4 weeks, and I am so ecstatic, and I'm ecstatic for him, ecstatic for America, ecstatic for the president. It's not just those names. It's Kash Patel at the FBI. It's John Radcliffe at the CIA. I mean, look, you think it's surreal? What do you think it's like for me? I've been doing this for 30 years, brother. I've been teaching, analyzing the threat, explaining it to our war fighters at Bragg, to our intelligence community, to federal and state law enforcement. That's what I've been doing, eating, drinking, and sleeping this stuff for nigh on 3 decades, and now I actually get to do it for the most consequential president of the modern age. So, yeah, it's on January the 1st, it will have been 6 years. I will have been gifted by Phil Boyce and Ed Atzinger and Dave Santrella at Salem, a national radio show, which I have loved. And as Hungarians say, one of my eyes is crying, one of them is smiling. But, I will be leaving that behind, and my Newsmax TV show, to actually do that which I have been talking about for 30 years, brother. It is unbelievable.
I'm so excited. Okay, so I think I have a good picture of who's above you and who's around you.
Yeah.
Who is below you? Who?
Good question.
I don't know. There's a better word for that. But who's below you? And like, do you get to pick that and pick those people? And what's happening there?
So this is where it starts to get really interesting. So each directorate has people who work for the senior director. I'll have a deputy who's the director of counterterrorism. I've already picked out somebody who is perhaps one of the greatest counterterrorism practitioners I've ever met. I'm bringing him out of retirement, and he is ready to serve again. He was in the U.S. Air Force doing special operations and counterterrorism, wearing a uniform a few years back. Then I'll have a whole staff of people who are, unfortunately, so there's political appointees who are the chiefs, so senior director and director, those are political appointees of the president. And then almost everybody else inside the N.S.A. are actually detailees from government, mostly from the Pentagon, the State Department, and the CIA. These are people who are brought over for 1 year or 2 years to serve in the White House in a government billet, mostly because everybody has to have, top secret SCI clearance, right? And that takes a long time for a regular civilian to obtain. So we bring them over from government. So, that's, you can imagine how many CVs and resumes I've been sent in the last 2 weeks. So, I will have to be identifying the best of the best across government. A lot of them are going to be my former students, to bring them over to the White House to support me in my directorate.
Okay, so but that's okay. I didn't know you were going to make that turn at the end. You do get to pick who those people are.
Yeah, I get to pick, and then we have to shuffle them from the agencies over to serve, with their requisite expertise under that senior director for that portfolio.
Okay. I don't want to put it on you. How does one trust that these quote unquote government people, however you're supposed to put it, will do the job that they're told to do if maybe their ideological beliefs may be different than the new administration's?
Well, they are people who I personally know, have worked with, have trained myself, or they come highly recommended. So I'm not going to mention names, but there's a serving general right now who was at Harvard with me 25 years ago, who is now serving in the Middle East. He is one of the most honorable patriots I know in uniform or out of uniform. And this individual has given me, I don't know, half a dozen names of people in government, in the military who he served with, and he says I vouch for every single one of them. So it's not if it's not people I've personally trained or worked with, they are people who have come recommended to me by individuals I trust implicitly.
I just did a podcast episode on Zechariah 1, and there's an amazing scene where an angel speaks to Zechariah and says there's 4 horns that are coming up to fight against the Israelites. And Zechariah is all freaked out. And then the angel's like, hey, don't worry. There's also 4 blacksmiths I'm rising up as well to shatter those horns. Mm-hmm. And I read this analysis from Charles Spurgeon, and Charles Spurgeon's like, hey, don't stress. Don't worry. Yes, the 4 horns came up first and everyone is all freaking out, but God is raising the right people in wait at the right time to be ready to rise up at the perfect moment to shatter those horns and save his people. I just came across this yesterday, and it's like, that's so encouraging to hear you say that there are those people there ready still to be called and do the right thing that needs to be done right now.
Yeah, this is, there are, and this is what I've been worried about most for the last 4 years, because to do what I'm going to do and to come and work for President Trump, you either have to be utterly, completely insane or just the biggest patriot on anybody's scale of loyalty to America. Because especially if you're doing it in a public-facing position, I mean, most of the people in the N.S.A, nobody will know who they are. But if you're coming in as a Tom Homan, a Caroline Levitt, a Kash Patel, yes, you're going to have to go through a Dantean inferno. And look, for me, it's easy because I've lived it and I laugh at it. Well, having one journalist out of scores write 52 hit pieces on me in the space of 7 months when I was first in the White House, to have quote-unquote journalists attack my wife, write hit pieces on my 18-year-old son using the word traitor in the headline, having senators who are still on Capitol Hill when I'm in the White House write letters to the Department of Homeland Security that I, as a legal immigrant to the United States, should be investigated for my immigrant status and be deported from America. Once you've gone through that, you kind of you look at the stuff they're putting Pete Hegseth through and my buddy Kash Patel, and you kind of say, bring it, you complete lame-ass hats. I've seen it. I've been there. If the Washington Post were writing nice things about me, every Trump voter should be worried. So when they dropped that hit piece last week, or when John Bolton, the clown with the 1970s porn mustache says Gorka should be in government, or Kash Patel is like the KGB's barrier, you say, well, if John Bolton said nice things about me, I wouldn't even accept the position in the Trump administration.